Friends, let me tell you a little secret. I used to be a kid once. And even back then, I was already building models. And luckily, a few of them are still surviving to this day. There's like 4 of them, but that's better than nothing. Well, okay, I have more photos of my previous works than actual physical evidence, but I think something that can be touched and shown on video is much better, right? Because there's one thing about being a child and not a real adult human, is that you have different perspective on things, right? You have less skills and you have no budget, right? So yeah, all of these factors can lead to some interesting results. And when I'm looking back at my works from 15, 16 years ago, I can see from, my current viewpoint where I had to cut corners, where I didn't care much about certain things, and so on, right? And I can already tell you one thing that I'm noticing immediately. If it wasn't fun, I didn't put any time into it. So yeah, with that being said, let's take a look at them. Okay, so let's talk about the oldest model from this bunch. And actually, it's this Panzer IV. And although it's not the oldest model I've ever built, it's a tank that I built when I was 14 years old, so around 2005. When I was going into this project, I knew I wanted to build a blown-up tank. Okay, so what were my options? Well, back in 2005, we didn't have these full interior kits from MiniArt or Rayfield models. When I'm actually looking at it, I'm surprised that a lot of work went into this, I used everything that I needed and nothing more. So the interior sets, the gun barrel so I could convert it into a G. I used rubber tracks because there was no money for plastic ones. Yeah, the limitations of that time and my skill set become apparent when we're looking at the paint job and the weathering. So for example, all the rust zones were done using, I think, Revell and Humbrol enamels. And it's not really, like rusty rust, it's more of a reddish brick colored paint, And this was back in the day when we didn't have any textured pastes or modeling clays or anything of that. So I think this is plaster. So plaster painted with some watercolors, and then I sprinkled colored sawdust over it to simulate grass. And the stuff you can buy in modeling shops, it's pretty cheap, but even back then I knew that this wasn't really cutting it. So I tried experimenting, and this long grass is made from corn, because corn has this natural hair. And really the only other thing is the composition, because as you can probably guess, the whole scene is kinda off-center, but not in a good way. Because the long gun barrel is making all this empty space here, and everything that's interesting is crammed into this half, and the front of the hull is almost falling down the base. So yeah, I'd say 3 out of 10 for effort. The next one is this KV2, and this one was done when I was 15. And the main difference between this and the Panzer IV is that here I was already starting to use pigments. Yeah, another thing about when you're a kid and you, for example, have a friend who's also building models, you tend to swap them. For example, this one, my friend bought the model, he built it out of the box, and then he lost interest in it. So I traded him with an unbuilt kit of something else, and I had a built model that I could modify. So I stripped the fenders, added the battle damage. Oh, by the way, the shell impacts were made using a hot needle. Yeah, good old times. Yeah, there's like a lot of pigments used on this model, which, I mean, they don't look great, but the difference between this and the weathering on the Panzer IV is huge thanks to the pigments. Yeah, when I said that I had zero experience with making vignettes or seating bases, I wasn't lying, because although these two have a scenic base, I didn't learn much from them, because that one was just a wet plaster plopped on a wooden base, and this, I think this is scrunched up newspaper wrapped or covered with toilet paper soaked in diluted plaster. So the technique isn't really groundbreaking. Oh, and also, this is what it looks like when you use static brass and you don't paint it. I just don't like it. Okay, so this is 2008. So I was 17, so not really a kid anymore, but come on, I'm working with what I have. And this model was actually pretty groundbreaking for me, because at this point I was posting photos of my works on our local modeling forums, and until this model, the feedback was mostly just criticism, like focus on the basics, try to assemble the model without any flaws and so on. And here, with this model, I think this was the first time when people actually started complimenting me, like, yeah, that actually looks pretty good, you know? And it felt awesome. And this is also the first model where I tried to make proper weld beads using the stretch sprue method. I actually don't know why, but this model was seriously covered in dust, which I do know why, but what I can't figure out why it is so yellow. That's really something, like that's not incorrect white balance in the video. That's actually how yellow the tank is. I mean, the snow is pretty obvious because that's just baking soda fixed with clear gloss varnish from Humbrol. But the model, I don't understand. Another interesting detail, the transmission hatch that's missing on the engine deck, I just lost it during construction. And again, this is something you don't really care about, or rather, at least I didn't care about when I was a kid. It wasn't important to me, you know? I just went with it. Like, yeah, well, they lost it in real life as well, big deal. And there's a small pattern here. I had a thing for KV tanks without fenders. Oh, I broke something, and I broke something again. Okay, this one was built when I was 18. Okay, so definitely not a kid anymore. There's nothing really special about it, other than the model survived. At this point, when I was 18, I was already sort of into modifying models, improving them, making them more interesting. So for example, I added the extra armor on the turrets. I ripped off one side here. I don't know what it's called. And yeah, scratch built this thing, added the logs. Yeah, everything is just falling apart. And the funniest thing about it is the snow. So again, this is baking soda, which interestingly remained completely white compared to the KV1. But I don't remember how I tried to fix it. I know I used PVA glue, I sort of stippled it and then sprinkled it with baking soda, but when I touch it, it's falling from the model. Yeah, if I sneezed on it, there would be so this is Christmas all over again, and I don't really want that. So yeah, this is the newest or most recent, okay, the antenna just fell off. So this is the most recent model I finished when I was 18, so 13 years ago. Yeah, it sucks being old. Okay, final notes on these. I think they show their age, and also, in my opinion, they don't look good at all. But somehow, I don't know if it's the lighting or the fact they're, filmed on video, but in these 360 shots, they don't look bad at all. And yeah, honestly, I'm just glad that I decided to make this video so they will live on, because sadly, I don't have space for them anymore, so I'll be getting rid of them. Because that's another thing. I don't know, again, if it's subjective or not, but things over time lose all value, even the sentimental value, at least for me. So yeah, it is what it is. And okay, let's go quickly through those models that I only have photographs of them. And let's Let's start with my first diorama ever. That video, titled My First Diorama, has 3D printed parts in it. I lied. This is my first diorama ever. And those are my first two armor models that I built when I was 11 or 12. And yeah, the diorama itself, I gotta say, just real clay just piled into these four molds made from styrofoam or something, held together by insulating tape, and these railroad trees just stuck into it. And I remember planning a lake for the scene, and my plan was to just use a regular kitchen bowl and just fill it with water. So yeah, this is what happens when you have zero knowledge and you don't have access to internet. Okay, next one is 2004, and it's a NAS horn from Dragon. And this was my first totally serious model where I did research. I bought aftermarket for it. Well, even though it was just ammo crates and figures, but still, right? And I detailed the model with wires, details made from, aluminum foil, from soda cans. And it's also the first time when I was weathering the lower hull, I used a combination of pigments and oil paints, and the results were, well, as I'm looking at them, not bad at all. Okay, now we're making a huge leap. So it's 2007 and I'm sort of really into building destroyed tanks. And yeah, it has rubber tracks, and even the fenders are plastic, and I damaged them by heating them up with a lighter, and I somehow managed to damage them in a pretty authentic way. And I remember someone at the model show commenting that, okay, he's using photo etch fenders, that's not fair. And I was like, what? Those are plastic fenders, what are you talking about? And this destroyed NAS horn is the same one I just shown you. And yeah, at the time it was my most intricate model, and I was so into building destroyed vehicles that I just cut it into pieces and ironically never finished the wreck. Okay, so this Panther is also from 2007, and this was my first encounter with oxide primer and factory finishes. At the time I had no clue what it was, I just found it interesting and I just went with it. Also from this year is this Panzer II, and this is just the old Tamiya kit, and I was building it during summer and it only took me like 3 days or so. I even forgot to apply a pin wash over it. And the base is just diluted PVA, well, it wasn't even diluted, it was thick PVA glue and just sprinkled with baking soda. So yeah, that's how we used to make snow scenes back in the day. Okay, 2008, and this E10 was a model that, I don't know how to describe it, but it was a quick project. It actually has metal tracks on it, and I don't know what's so specific about it, but to this day I really like the weathering. Maybe it's just the fact that oxide primer goes really well with dust tones. That might be actually the only thing that's so good about it. And this is also from the same year, and I think it's one of the most important models I've ever built, because it's the Trumpeter E100, again, completely out of the box. But if you see a resemblance with Adam Wilder's Panther F, then you're right. I completely copied his model, and it was the first time when I was actually thinking really hard about what I'm actually doing, So it's sort of, I don't know, I consider it a small breakthrough in the techniques I've been using. And yeah, this King Tiger, so the E100 was a huge leap forward, and this was just evolution but backwards. And yeah, this model isn't really good. It's a 1/48 scale model from Tamiya, and I don't even really know what was my goal with it. Also from the same year, this KV1, I tried to paint it in a raw metal finish, again inspired by Adam Wilder and his unpainted T-34 from Stalingrad, but I never finished it. Also from this year, wow, 2008 was a really productive year. This Mark IV tadpole from Emhar, and this was just too much for me at the time, you know. World War I tanks and weathering, it's not easy. You have to understand the basics, which I didn't at the time. Also 2008, another 148 scale model from Tamiya, and this Sherman was it was a failure. You know, I tried to make it from desert, but I completely overdid the armor texture, and the chipping on the olive drab is just And this is 2009, so let me count. Yeah, again, I was 18. So all these previous models, when I was 17, I was just popping them out like rabbits during mating season, which is pretty cool. So if you're 17, you better build those models, don't just collect them. And this last one, yeah, it's the last one. This is also something that when I'm looking at it, I have really fond memories of it because, okay, it's nothing special. It's a T-3485 in a winter camo, but the small piece of terrain and the way I positioned the model on the base, that's something that makes it worth remembering. And one day I'd like to make something similar to this. I remember doing most of the weathering when I was at a sleepover at my friend. I was trying to get him into armor modeling, and he wasn't really feeling it, you know. He was playing on his PSP and I was weathering the T-34 next to him. Okay, we didn't talk about what we can learn from these models, although it's in the video title. And I was thinking really hard about this topic because I don't want to make this video like, oh, let's laugh at my old models because I also used to be a kid. But if there's something to be learned, maybe you're a kid, or maybe not, maybe you're a normal human, but you're starting out. I gotta be honest, I try to think about something really deep, but I have nothing, honestly. When I was building models, there were no YouTube tutorials, no modeling books, almost no magazines. Most of these were done without any magazine articles from Mick Jimenez or Adam Wilder or whoever. So it was all trial and error, or maybe something you learned from someone on a modeling show. And on the other hand, there were no dedicated products. And even if they were either too expensive for me because I had no money, or they were impossible to get. Be it scenic snow or some good quality resin water, it'll put you leagues ahead, you know, in front of everyone else who's scrambling, you know, using baking soda or PVA glue for water puddles, you know, that's what I'm trying to say. Whatever kind of information I was trying or advice I was trying to get from my past experience, it just doesn't apply in this day and age. I think the biggest takeaway from my past and my experiences and how I evolved or devolved over the years, that's for you to judge, is that if you're happy with what you're doing, keep doing it. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. When I look at these imperfect, ugly, I can say it, models, when I think back, I have good memories of them. I remember my friends whom I, you know, hung out with, and we swapped models and talked about ideas and so on. For example, the corn hair for grass, I shared that with my friend. We sort of brainstormed that. Even when I finished a model and I knew it wasn't perfect or it wasn't up there with the rest on a modeling show, I wasn't sad about it. I think that's the most important thing in modeling. So unless you're unhappy with something or you have a strong urge to improve, be honest. Thank you, I appreciate it, but I'm doing my own thing, I'm enjoying it, and I just wanted to show all of you that I'm having a good time, even if the model is not the best. Nobody can tell you to not have a good time with modeling, with this hobby. So yeah, I guess that's gonna be it. So I hope you found this video helpful, or at the very least interesting or funny to watch. And if you enjoyed it and you like what I'm doing and want to get more of it, you can support me on Patreon, because right now I'm actually building another really huge, well, not really huge, but I think the next model is going to be pretty awesome. And as I'm recording this, I'm already almost finishing the construction, and it's going to be pretty sweet. So if you want to see that right now, just head over to my Patreon page, and if you choose the middle tier or the top tier, you will be able to check it out. Actually, the top tier patrons can already watch the next video that's gonna come out the next week, and that's gonna be the construction part of that model. So yeah, you can check even that out. And yeah, I just want to say to all of you, to my patrons, and also to all of you watching me on YouTube, just a huge and honest thank you, because as I was talking about these models, I just realized that, you know, I used to be a kid once as well, just having fun and, you know, wasting money on plastic toys and sitting, you know, inside during the evenings instead of chasing girls or whatever. And I never really even dreamed or imagined, like, yeah, I'd like this to be my job one day, you know, and now, thanks to all of you, I'm doing this for a living. So yeah, that's pretty awesome, and I'm eternally grateful for that. I guess I'll just see you in the next one, and until then, you all stay safe, stay awesome, keep building those models, don't just collect them, especially if you're 17, because as you just saw, you can build like 10 in a year if you're 17, so make the best out of that. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!